Star Wars 7x7, episode 2211. In listening to the Doctor Aphra audiobook, it becomes clear that there are three different kinds of unreliable narrators. Dr. Aphra is actually all three, but they have different meanings, they have different purposes, and they're not all her fault. Punch it. Hey Rebel Rouser, I'm Alan Voivod, and this is Star Wars 7x7, your daily dose of Star Wars joy. And thank you so much for joining me for it. So, we're continuing to talk about the Doctor Aphra audiobook by Sarah Kuhn, and the deal with Aphra as an unreliable narrator is what we're going to talk about today. Unreliable narrators are kind of an interesting thing in storytelling in general, but we don't get a lot of them in Star Wars in specific. I think probably the nearest thing that we get to an unreliable narrator is Hondo Ohnaka in Pirate's Price, in the younger reader's novel by Lou Anders that does some work with what is happening on Batuu, giving us a little preview of Galaxy's Edge and things that were happening in between The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker. But in this case, we are getting a situation with an unreliable narrator, and the other thing that's kind of unusual about it is that Aphra herself does not come across as an unreliable narrator in any of the source material, in the Darth Vader comics on which the story is based, and also the few issues of the flagship Star Wars series that also include Doctor Aphra. But the reason why Aphra is not an unreliable narrator in the stories upon which the audio drama is based is because she is not the star of the story. She is certainly a prime supporting character in it, but she is not the star of the show. She is not the one telling the story, and so therefore her quote-unquote unreliability is not an issue whatsoever. Although I will say that the audio drama makes it clear that at least one thing she said of significance about her backstory in the comic series is apparently unreliable after all. And that brings us basically to the first kind of unreliable narrator situation, which is the kind of narrator who will tell you different versions of the same event. And probably the classic one that you might think of is, not a Star Wars one. It's Heath Ledger playing the Joker in The Dark Knight, saying, how I got these scars, and he has different stories for the different people that he talks to, and the stories are not the same whatsoever, and ultimately that he's just not telling the truth about any of them. More than likely. Maybe one of them is true, maybe not. Maybe little pieces of each one are. Hard to say. And that's part of the dark charm of the character, if you will, and also part of the terror of the character, to be sure. And having read the comics before listening to the audio drama, I remembered that Aphra shared a bit about her backstory with another character, and I won't tell you who the character is. It's not somebody you've ever heard of unless you've read the comics, and it's somebody who is going to die, and so she feels safe enough telling this person her backstory about being young and raiders coming and attacking her mother, and her finding a gun in a cave and totally shooting up all the raiders. Well, when the audio drama plays out, there's a section where she tells the story and as a narration thing much differently, and that was kind of surprising, and I thought, oh my gosh, what are we doing? Are we retelling this whole story? Are we doing things differently? And then later on, that same scene from the comics is depicted in the audio drama, and she talks about her backstory in the same way, and so you realize, oh, okay, so she's going to tell different stories to different people, and it starts making you think pretty early on that she is going to be an unreliable narrator. Now, the second kind of unreliable narrator situation in the Doctor Aphra audio drama is a function of Doctor Aphra herself and the fact that she's been elevated to star status in the story. So she gets to tell the story the way that she wants to. She gets to hide certain details, she gets to misdirect, she gets to reveal things at later points, and so you come to find out that missions as they are performed don't necessarily give you the whole story for what's going on, and it isn't until after the fact in some cases that she will say, oh, I didn't tell you this part of the story. And you'll find out more information that makes you go, ooh, that was sneaky and double-crossy and all that stuff. And then there's a third type of unreliable narrator situation. And I would say that this is not Aphra's fault exactly. This is completely and utterly the decision of Sarah Kuhn, in that the way that the story is set up and told is done so in a way where not all of the information about the recording situation is revealed and why Aphra is making the recording. And I'm not sure if we've really discussed that. I think I may have hinted at it a bit in the initial non-spoiler review, but Aphra is recording her exploits, a la, say, the Calrissian Chronicles, right? Where we see Donald Glover narrating his adventures in Solo: A Star Wars Story. So there's a lot of that going on, and some fun stuff where she goes, oh, you're recording, encrypt this so I don't delete it later, or delete that, or mark this for me to follow up on, so there's some good fun that happens through there. And so initially you think she's talking to you as the listener, and that's her audience, but then you realize, oh no, it's a recording, she's actually recording it, and so it's not necessarily the fourth wall breaking that you think it is, but then you find out what it's really about, and I won't spoil that one for you, but suffice it to say, it is something that makes Aphra unreliable, or at least makes the storytelling unreliable, and so you don't necessarily know the purpose for why she is doing it. You find out later, and that is a reveal that isn't necessarily her as an unreliable narrator, it's Sarah Kuhn making the situation something else entirely and having a reveal that happens later on, track 40, 41 out of 55, somewhere in there. And so there you go, 3 types of unreliable narrator situations that you will encounter in the Doctor Aphra audiobook, and that is going to do it for our show today. Thank you so much for joining me for it. As always, I will say, this whole unreliable narrator business, I think this is kind of fun. I hope we get a little more of this. And yes, may the force be with you, wherever in the world you may be.
Star Wars 7x7 is not endorsed or sponsored yet by Lucasfilm Limited, Disney, or 20th Century Fox, and is intended for entertainment and information purposes only. Star Wars, the Star Wars logo, all names and pictures of Star Wars characters, vehicles, and any other Star Wars-related items are registered trademarks and/or copyrights of Lucasfilm Limited or their respective trademark and copyright holders. May the force be with them. All original content is copyright 2020 by Star Wars 7x7. We hope you love it.